Hello, my name is Aleksandra Twardowska, and this is Timothy Mulder. Welcome to the Conversations with the Deans interview series by Rethinking Economics NL, in which we interview deans of economic faculties throughout the Netherlands. Our goal is to give you a better understanding of what makes each economics education throughout the Netherlands unique, and how this relates to the ideas of Rethinking Economics NL. Today with us is Professor Witteloostuijn. He is a professor of business and economics at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, and dean of VU School of Business and Economics in the Netherlands, as well as research professor in business, economics, and governance at the University of Antwerp and Antwerp Management School in Belgium. His research interests range from international macroeconomics and personality psychology to industrial economics and organizational behavior. The question that runs through all his work is why some institutions, in the broad sense of the word, are successful while others are not. Van Witteloostuijn's interdisciplinary approach is unique. He combines insights from general economics, business science, and the social sciences in an innovative studies that examine the behavior and structure of organizations. For these reasons, we are delighted to have Professor Van Witteloostuijn here with us in order to gain a better understanding of the intricacies in economics programs throughout the Netherlands. In this interview, we will first focus on Professor Van Witteloostuijn's journey to becoming the Dean of VU, what makes VU's economics education values and what makes it unique, and lastly, how this refers to the ideas of Rethinking Economics NL. So, Professor Van Witteloostuijn, thank you for making the time to meet us today. First, we were hoping we could start with a question about your experience. Could you please tell us a bit more about what inspired you to become an economist and your journey to becoming the Dean at VU?
Well, that has been quite a journey now for many decades. So let's see what I remember from all that. Well, why I did start the studies in economics, I'm not so sure. It's too long ago. I think, to be honest, you're 18-year-olds, you're sitting at home. You have to think about what to do next. I was the first in my family that would go to university, so I had no advice from anyone. I had to do it on my own. So I did my kind of, I took the train to different universities on my own and just looked around and different studies. And then I had a list and I made what I liked and what I did not like, ticking boxes. And then I ended up studying economics in Groningen. And then in the first year, it's kind of, well, of course, you're young and then you have to kind of find your new place in the world standing on your own feet. But then after the first year, I started to like it more and more, and I became really a kind of a passionate student. I really liked the study of economics broadly. Again, I did both the business side, as well as the non-business side, what then was called general economics, now simply economics. And I did that really for many, many years. And in those days, it was still a study of 5 years rather than 4 now. Now it's 3 years bachelor, 1 year master's. In those days, it was 5. I became a student assistant, I think already in the second year, and I stayed a student assistant until the end of my studies. After this, I think the second year, I decided also to start studying psychology because I like studying. I liked also the idea to have kind of develop a deeper insight into individual behavior of human beings, which I thought would kind of nicely and synergetically interact with what I was doing in the studies of economics. And at some point, I think in the 5th years of my studies, I was asked whether or not I was willing to do a PhD. And at that point in time, I had no clue what that would involve. So it took me a couple of days of thinking, is that something I would like? Do I aspire to become an academic? Because I never thought about that. And I thought, well, why not? And that was still in Groningen, and it was a PhD on the micro foundations of macroeconomics. And then my then supervisor moved from Groningen, the north of the country, to Maastricht, the south. And that's what I did too. And then I kind of started to develop my own research skills more and more. Well, already then I started to develop my multidisciplinary kind of interests. So in my PhD, you will find also quite a lot that really relates to psychology rather than economics per se. What also was a kind of a career-changing event, perhaps, I don't know, is that at some point I decided that it would be good to stay abroad for a while. And then I contacted Professor William Baumol, a very famous economist. He passed away a couple of years ago. He's well known from his Baumol's disease, for example, and from contestability theory. And he said, yes, why not? So I stayed half a year at New York University I did whatever I did in terms of writing, sent it to him, and then about once in 2 weeks we had a meeting, and he said what I did wrong, and I returned to my computer, which was very primitive in those days, and worked on my papers, etc., etc. So that was really a life-changing event. Then I returned to the Netherlands, became an assistant professor, and quickly a full professor. I was a full professor at the age of 29, I think, or 30, something like that, at the University of Maastricht, and then made my career there and became the dean. And then it was time to leave. And then I moved to other places. I stayed at different universities, Warwick University, Durham University in the UK, University of Antwerp in Belgium. In Netherlands, I moved from Maastricht, then Groningen again, but then not as a student, but as a professor. Utrecht, Tilburg, and now Amsterdam. So about 9 to 10 universities in total. I always have been active in terms of admin, in terms of leading whatever, the department or the vice senior research or the dean or whatever, and that's what I'm still doing. Along the way, I developed my kind of research portfolio by simply, I think, curiosity. Do what you like, do what you're interested in, and whatever it is in the social science is broadly defined. So I moved from also in other disciplines like sociology, political science, public administration, because there were topics that were intriguing. But from day one, I really benefited a lot from the very good training in economics, because the studies of economics is extremely well equipped to train your thinking, your analytical thinking, both in terms of the theory. There's a really a heavy emphasis on theory, as well in terms of your research skills if you start doing empirical studies. So I still benefit from that.
Wow, that's quite an incredible
journey.
Quite incredible one. Thank you. So given that you have been actually a part of multiple economics faculties in the Netherlands, but also abroad, what do you think are the most important changes in economics education and research you have seen over your academic career?
Well, actually, that's perhaps one of the things that is rather surprising about economics. You do not see that many changes, actually. It's really a kind of, it's what makes it very different and what sets it apart from the other social sciences, that it has a very strong paradigm. Paradigm, not in the sense that there are different topics, of course, and methods kind of become more and more sophisticated. So that's not the point. The point is that the paradigm, both in terms of theory and in terms of methods, what you should do in order, if you want to engage and be involved in economics, is actually very constant. So in terms of the theory, it's really this kind of the thought that the neoclassical paradigm, that you need to think about that some entities are maximizing something, and that they are rational in one way or another. But that's actually that's defined in a very broad way, because non-economists always think about economists' utility as money and certainty and complete information. That's bullshit. That has never been like that. From day one, I entered into economics. It was very clear, no, utility can be anything. It can also be non-monetary issues. Uncertainty abounds. There are all kinds of different types of uncertainty. We need to take into account. Information is imperfect, etc., etc. So in that sense, yes, it's all about utility maximization, but in a very flexible kind of way that it becomes much closer to reality than non-economists tend to think. So, but that's a key thing, and that's kind of in the field of economics throughout. Another aspect is that they like to turn to math, and they like to model. So economists like to make these little models, and they become more and more complicated, where these entities are kind of maximizing something, and they start to interact. And if they start to interact, you have to kind of develop an insight into what might be an equilibrium. So you need to develop equilibrium insights if different entities start to interact, etc. So this is the second kind of key part. And the third is that from economics, there came a kind of a branch, which was actually originates in the Netherlands, econometrics. And econometrics is a very clever and sophisticated machinery, basically, to try to identify causal relationships and also the importance and the kind of the size of the effect of those relationships. And that's really in the core of economics, and it has been in the core of economics from day one. It also implies that there are other things that economists tend not to do. And that's what I think is a weakness. And that's one of the things that I would like to see changing also in terms of the rethinking economics kind of development. So there are very different ways to study the world as well, rather than this. So interviewing, qualitative work, developing your questionnaires in a very kind of careful way, doing kind of observation studies, there's much more out there than this kind of core paradigm. This core paradigm is extremely strong, extremely productive, and it's well developed, and it's good that we have that. But from there, we start to kind of travel into different domains in other territory, and that's happening also step by step. Behavioral economics is a well-known example, but there's much more to do.
Given all that you have just described, kind of to zoom back a little, what do you think is the primary role of economists in society, and what is the value that they bring, actually?
Well, society is a big thing, so it very much depends on where they are in society. But they are well trained to have a deeper insight in. Basically, it's a straw man, so it's much more complicated than that. But they are very clever and very well trained to think in terms of cost and benefits, and try to, and by kind of finding out what those cost and benefits are, and kind of comparing the two to one another, kind of to find their way in terms of improving lives. All kinds of, it can be a life in an organization by developing better strategies. It can be as a consultant, giving advice to whatever. It can be applied research. It can be by working in a bank. It can be anything. But they're really analytically well trained to kind of always think about these kind of costs and benefits and different alternatives and weigh those against one another, given the goals that you would like to achieve. And economics is not about the goals. The goals has been set by society or the organization or a democracy or whatever. But if you know what are the goals, then you can start to think about what can be the means, the best means to most efficiently and effectively achieve those goals. And then economists are very well trained to do so.
Thank you for expounding on your journey and saying what the primary role of economics should be. We were hoping we could also ask you a few questions about economics education at the VU. Could you tell us more about the unique strengths the program has relative to economics programs of other universities throughout the Netherlands?
Well, to be honest, I think the difference between the programs in the Netherlands are minor. So they're all very similar. And it has to do with my first point, or one of my earlier points, that there is this very strong paradigm and this very kind of well-developed apparatus, how to conduct economics. That's what being trained all over the place. So the things that I discussed earlier are also in the program at the VU, and they're in the program in Groningen, and in Tilburg, and Maastricht. All those programs share those very same features, and that implies, I don't know, 80%, whatever. You have to check, but a large percentage of those programs are really, really very much alike. And of course, there are differences in how you teach. So Maastricht, for example, where I was used to work for 12 years, they have problem-based learning. That's different. But apart from that, I think this core is very, very similar. It's also what do you need to train, what needs to be trained in terms of research capabilities, the math side, the set statistics, econometric side. Really, I think we all share 80% or even more. I don't know, very much so. Another thing that is kind of striking, that over the years, all those programs became more and more international. So basically, I think if you would like to do studies in the Netherlands at a university for 3 years in Dutch, I don't think you will find one. Formally, they're all bilingual. So formally, I think most of economics programs advertise that they're bilingual, both Dutch and English. But in practice, after year one, English, full stop. So in that sense, they became more and more similar, even more than they already were. So then still what sets them apart are little things. So for example, the Vrije Universiteit has roots, very specific roots in a long history. It used to be an emancipation university. It was established as a private university to serve a specific part of the population that was not served well by the then existing university system. So this idea that you need to serve people that are not well served has been there from day one. So that implies now, these days, in the 2020s, that together with Rotterdam, we have the largest share of students that are non-Dutch, non-Western, come from different parts of the world, and are different, second or third generation immigrants, for example. We have a very large share of that. So that gives also a different atmosphere, the classroom changes as a result of that. So that's one thing that sets it apart. The other thing is that the VU and hence also the economics program has a couple of values that are really kind of central and that are kind of in the program all the time. So it's like open tolerance and trying to invest in personal development, try to behave responsibly and try to kind of contribute to more than your own life, to larger things than your own life. So there is much in terms of that, and that implies there are bits and pieces in the program that are different. For example, we have a concept that is called a broader mind, and that implies that there are bits and pieces in the curriculum where you have to do more than economics alone, where you have to interact with other disciplines and where you have to try to contribute to solving a problem in society, say poverty in a neighborhood or whatever. And then you work together with people from other disciplines to do so. So I think, and the other thing that is kind of very specific, probably for the VU program, that there is a larger place for ethics. It has to do with the other issues that are already raised. So in all programs, including economics programs, there are specific courses focusing on issues of ethics, relating to ethics. So that by and large, but still, I have to admit, both programs in the Netherlands tend to be rather similar. Not only in the Netherlands, I guess, this is a worldwide phenomenon.
Thank you very much. And earlier in the interview, you also mentioned what the primary role of economists is. How does that relate to the unique strengths of your faculty?
Well, as I said, that one of the things that economists can do very well, if there are kind of goals set by whatever, democracy and organization, then they have been trained to think about the different means to achieve those goals. Well, that's part of our program as well. And in those kind of, let's say, there's a broader mind, for example, and we also have something like community service learning. Then there is an issue, there's a goal, there's something to be solved somewhere in an organization, in a neighborhood, wherever. And then the economists, our students are trained to help to contribute to solving this. So that's precisely what economists are well trained to do. And that's what they indeed do already during their studies, now and then in the form of different modules and different courses.
Okay, thank you very much. And kind of the reason we are here as well is that at Rethinking Economics, we believe that the economics education needs to become more interdisciplinary, real-world based and pluralistic. And reflecting on our earlier discussion, could you please tell us how your personal story and VU's faculties or the VU faculty relates to these Rethinking Economics values?
Yes. I think the key thing is actually what I initiated. I'm here now for not less than 4 years, so it's not that something that massive already has been achieved in those short period of time. But the key thing I believe in that respect is that I initiated the development of a whole new curriculum. So a fully new bachelor program in economics that will be very different from the West, and it will be very different in a couple of from a couple of perspectives. The first is that we will call it's in Dutch. Because I think if you are trained to serve a specific society, so you need to be well kind of ingrained in that society, understand also the institutional, very subtle things of that society. So it will be fully in Dutch, 3 years, and also everything in terms of examples and the things you have to do will be related to Dutch society. So, for example, I think if you're not Dutch, it might be difficult, but we have this very kind of polder model. So you really will understand that. We have things like the SER, or we have you need to kind of the miljoenennota. All these different, really, really Dutch things will be part of the studies. That's one thing. The other thing is that it will be very multidisciplinary. So the core of the program, so the backbone is still you have to be trained as an economist. You have microeconomics, you have all these things, of course, macroeconomics, international. Sure, that will be part of the program. Everything related to business, not everything, but most of what has been related to business will be out, because if you want to study business, please do so. There's no need to study business and economics. You will study economics, and instead there will be many courses relating to different disciplines. So economics and history, economics and biology, economics and literature, economics and sociology, economics and so all these courses will be kind of next to the backbone, will be there. So that's a new element. So there will, for example, will also be a course, economics and literature, where you have to read literature which has a very strong specific economics flavor, and then try to understand this economics flavor and why is that in this book and what does that tell us about society, blah, 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 blah. So that's just an example. That's a new element. Another new element is that there will be labs. So there will be labs, but the only thing you will do is that you will study a specific topic in interaction with stakeholders in society. So say there is a topic, poverty. I don't know, we can change those labs year after year, depending upon what we think it makes sense. Then you will study the issue of poverty, and you will do so in close interaction with stakeholders in society. For example, the municipality that has to deal with poverty in a specific neighborhood as well, or the citizens themselves that struggle with issues of poverty. So you will really send into society and help solving with specific societal issues. So that's another element. And also in terms of the methods, it will be different. So as you already indicated, in traditional economics training, the methods are very standard. Here it will be different. So you will also be trained, for example, in interviewing. So in that sense, it will be a whole different, it will really be a novel curriculum. And we are now a year underway. So we have basically we now know what to do, and now we have to go to NVO. And so in the Netherlands, it takes 3 years if you want to study a new bachelor program before you can really start. So given where we are now, I hope you'll be able to kind of start this new program in 2023.
All right. Thank you for giving or teasing us with these contours of a new program, which sounds very much in line with our endeavor. What I wanted to ask you as well, and it's not about the new program, but about the existing programs at VU, with relation to a report we wrote. Because in 2018, we conducted a quantitative analysis of bachelor curricula throughout the Netherlands. And it was a report called Thinking Like an Economist. And the report found out that Dutch economics education was dominated by the study of market mechanisms among rational, utility maximizing actors, as you mentioned before. Yeah. Sure. And these markets are implicitly presumed to make up the entire economic system. And this notion stems from the dominance of the neoclassical approach, which, according to our study, takes up around 86% of our theory course time. And students are also trained within a framework dominated by quantitative methods, which constitute, according to the study, 97% of our course time. There's also a lack of real-world economics here, as 75% of our courses stay completely within the world of abstract theory. So we were wondering, for the VU, we found out that at the time of the study, neoclassical economics constituted 93% of all teaching time, and the bachelor had relatively few interdisciplinary courses and relatively moderate amount of pluralistic courses. The university did, however, offer a relatively large number of courses with a real-world focus, as you kind of mentioned before. Would you say that the economics program at VU has changed since then? And if so, in what ways? Talking about the existing programs at
sure.
VU.
My straight answer is no. Of course, they haven't changed. Things have been changed, but not radically. To do so, we decided to do new programs rather than changing the current program. That's also very pragmatic. You know, this program is there. It's doing well. It is being well evaluated. It checks students. It also has this kind of strong component regarding business, which because it's business economics and economics. So it's in that sense we said, well, let's leave that not untouched, but largely untouched. Do some fine tuning, but do something new next to that. And the one that I already referred to is one, and the other one is that we have a PPE program. So we launched a PPE program, which is political, let's say, philosophy, political science, and economics. And that is now running for 4 years, perhaps. So it must be launched about the time you were here. And that's also different because it's by its very nature, it's multidisciplinary because we have those 3 disciplines in there. So these are the things that we have done. And I think that actually, one of the things that I have studied over many, many decades is change and changing organizations. And changing well-established routines is a nightmare. It takes many, many years. You have to, it's an uphill battle. There is much resistance. So most of the real innovation is not emerging because you change things that are already out there, but because you start something new. And that's what we did. And then if that's there and it's successful, then it starts to change the existing program as well. But that's kind of a roundabout way. If you now would try to change an existing program, I think perhaps it can be done, but it takes much more time, much more difficult, and you will be much less successful than starting new programs as we do, those two.
But wouldn't you say throughout the years that you were a dean at VU, the economics program has changed a little bit? You said you fine-tuned it a bit, but concretely, what did change then?
Well, it's really at the level of the not really, as already said, no, not anything fundamental. So there have been courses that have been changed names, or there has been another textbook, or there have been another assignment. So it's really not essential at all. The changes have been happening outside of that program. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And do you think that the economics education, or would you agree with us that that it has to become more interdisciplinary and real-world based and pluralistic? And if so are there concrete plans for such changes?
The answer is, of course, absolutely yes, and that's why we have launched these two new bachelor programs. Otherwise, we have not done so. No, so absolutely, I think that we should have economics programs that are different from the standard ones. It's too much, as we would say in Dutch, eenheidsworst. That's not good anyway. So we need to have kind of, it's all the same sausage, just to kind of say in the basically what eenheidsworst means. And you need different types, and you need to be able to choose, and it needs to be kind of, in that sense, has to be changed. My own understanding of economics program is that they will change in their course slowly as well. But that takes time, as already indicated. So I think in many of the programs, and it will not be different in our university, behavioral economics has become more important. 3 decades ago, it didn't exist. Now it does. So these things are changing. But behavioral economics is a very specific way of dealing with multidisciplinarity. It takes for very specific types of psychology to work with, and not other types, for whatever, because the types that it does cherry pick are the ones that kind of fit nicely with the dominant neoclassical paradigm of the utility maximizing agent. So the ones that are very different, say personality psychology, that are too different, they leave them not untouched, but largely untouched. So I think in that sense, yes, things are happening, and the things that are happening are the ones that fit nicely with what is already out there, that changing slowly. And next to that, we will do the other things that kind of introduce much more radical change. And at some point, those two worlds will start to meet again. And that's happening now. I think, given the fact that we will be able to launch this new program within 2 years, already indicates that things are happening quickly. If we do so, then the other universities, and it is successful, that's how it works, then other universities will, hey, wow, that's interesting. We need a program like that as well. And then there will be popping up more of those. Yeah.
Now, moving a bit towards our final concluding questions, we wanted to ask you then, what are the main goals for the economics education at VU, and how do they relate to the unique strengths of the economics program, including aspects, of course, of interdisciplinarity, real-world economics, and pluralism?
Yeah, well, my main goal is, I think there are two things. One is that within the existing programs, we will kind of further develop and strengthen these issues that are outside oriented, right? like community service learning, broader mind. So we will slowly kind of expand the extent to which we do that in the current programs. So that's one of the main things and that takes time, but that's what we are working on. That's one. And the other thing is these new programs, particularly the one Humane Economy. That's really kind of a key thing. So if that works out well, and we can take it from there. I already have another idea, but that will take time. That is, we are engaging in an alliance with University of Twente, and we do have technische bedrijfskunde in the Netherlands, where you kind of have technology and business together in a program. We do not have a program, technische economie, where you have intermingle technology and economics. And that's what another kind of That's a very different type of multidisciplinarity, but that would be very interesting as well. To together with Twente develop a new bachelor program, which would be called, let's say, economic engineering, or in Dutch, technische economie. That would be another interesting kind of path that I would like to at least launch within the next couple of years.
So more specifically, what are the necessary steps then to achieve these goals? And do you have concrete examples of more even importantly, when these goals will be implemented? You mentioned also the new bachelor program. And if not, when would you expect them to be implemented? Because of course it's difficult to be certain of anything.
Yeah. Well, if you launch a new program, the Netherlands is a bureaucratic. In that sense, that's not a marketplace at all, actually. It's a planning bureaucracy. So you need to kind of make your case to the ministry, which is called the macro-doelmatigheidstoets, which kind of indicates, yes, that we need this program. It's something that is missing. If not, they say no. You need to go to the accreditation authority, NVAO, etc. So it takes 3 years at least to really start a new program. And we're now on the way. So I really think we can do this in 2023. I really think we have something unique, and I would really be surprised if along the way, either the ministry or NVAO would say, no, we don't need this. So I think, yes, so that will be achieved in 2023. And that is as quick as possible. That is the quickest as possible. You cannot do this any quicker. So that's one thing. In the meantime, I will hope also to do this program at the interface with technology. That will take then 2 or 3 years longer. So that will be the 2024-25. In the meantime, on an annual basis, we can fine-tune existing programs and do things differently. And some of those things are also, again, very standard. I don't think there is any program in the Netherlands that is not engaging now with data science and artificial intelligence. Just that kind of examples. Of course, that's happening anyway. But to me personally, that is not so exciting. That's more incremental change. That's the kind of things that happen almost naturally. Those others are the big ones, and that takes more time. 2023 will be the first one that we can really celebrate something really new, I hope, I believe, I think.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for your insightful answers. And on behalf of the Rethink Economics NL, we would like to again thank you for taking part in this interview series. Thank you.